So we have seen already that we're commanded to love immigrants. The Bible tells us that everything has to be done orderly. The Bible teaches property rights. So that we can't just have these people saying, oh, it all belongs to all of us, it's all communal. No. If it's yours, it's yours. And you're going to answer to God on how you use it. God establishes boundaries. He puts borders and nations and walls around countries. And you also build walls and doors and gates around your home. Okay? And why is this? Because we live in a world of evil, and wisdom dictates that we recognize that world of evil. And when people break the law, we need a government that's going to be there to ensure that the law is enforced. These are all biblical principles that don't always directly apply to immigration, but they do apply, either directly or indirectly. Stewardship is an indirect one, and we should factor in stewardship principles whenever we are looking at immigration. And now here's one directly. The Bible very specifically says treat immigrants with dignity, and we saw that there's one law for both those who are born in the land and those who are a stranger. Is going to be the terminology in Ger and Ezra, or the Hebrew words, and they mean two different things. And there's one law for both of them. All right. The goal should be assimilation. Okay? The goal should be assimilation. I cannot say that strong enough. The goal should be assimilation. We're going to look at scriptures, and I want you to look at these scriptures and see all the scriptures. Someone needs to write a book about this. I don't know anybody's ever even written anything on this. But Renee says that I should, but I don't want to. I guess that's a problem, is I need to get the want to. But when I was researching what the Bible says about immigration, I was shocked. This is the thrust of what the Bible says right here. The thing that God says over and over is if you're going to have a country, you got to have a common set of values for that country. Common set of values. A country is more than borders. A country is values. People who share similar values. Now, isn't that the case in your home? You're not going to let people in your home that's not similar to you. I mean, if they're just really, really different and they want to bring their Buddha statue in and bow down to it, you're probably going to say, no, you can't do that here. If they're going to want to come into your home and they're going to want to watch things on TV that are just immoral, you're probably going to say, you know what, we're not on the same page here. I'm not so sure if this is good for us. For you, I'd like for you to be able to stay here, but our values are very different. I'm not sure if this is going to work out. So we have these principles, we apply them in our home, but for some reason, we have a whole generation of people today that don't recognize that they have to be applied at a national level too. What we all do in our homes, we have to do at a national level. So immigrants in the Old Testament, that's the Bible, by the way, they were to assimilate the biblical values of Israel. Let's look at some of them. Here we go. The first one is Exodus 12:19, which says, 7 days there shall be no leaven found in your houses. For whosoever eateth that which is leavened, even so, that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he be a stranger or born in the land. Two different groups there, but they were both to assimilate the same values. One might be born in Israel and the other might have migrated to Israel, a stranger. But they were both, this has to do with the Passover. At the Passover, they were to look in their houses for leaven because leaven was a picture of, and that sin had to be removed. Right? And that's what, this was all a picture of Jesus and how that Jesus takes sin out of our lives, out of our houses, out of our hearts, right? And they were practicing this in the Passover in the Old Testament. Israel did, as a nation. So God says if someone comes in and joins with Israel, then they have to do this. The stranger, Ger, in the Hebrew means a foreigner traveling in the midst. That's the stranger. We've seen that a lot in our several weeks that we've been doing this. Next week will probably be the last week of it. But here we go. We see that stranger is that foreigner that's traveling in the midst. But Ezrak, on the other hand, is translated here as born in the land. That's a native-born citizen. A native-born citizen. Okay? So you got the native-born citizen, and then you've got the foreigner that's traveling in the land. You got these two people here, and God says that both of them, when it comes to the Passover, are required to remove the leaven from the land, or from their house. So it didn't matter. The stranger, didn't matter if they were a stranger or born in the land, this foreigner assimilated the Passover practices of Israel. And that's religious. That was a religious practice. That was a religious practice. So I'm not saying, now people today will be all over the place on this and they'll say, are you saying that everyone that's in a country has to be of the same religion? I'm just telling you what God said about Israel, and I believe that it probably serves as a pretty good goal. Pretty good go. Are we going to be able to accomplish it precisely? Probably not. But should it be a goal? If it's in the Bible, there's probably some wisdom behind it, right? Probably some wisdom behind it. So the religious practices, which was the Passover practices, it didn't matter if you were a kosher Jew born in the land, doing all of the rituals, or if you were someone who came from another country in there, you were required by God to follow the same Passover practices. Is that assimilation? Yeah. And then how about Exodus 20:10? But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work. Thou, that would be the Jew, right? Nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. So there's some assimilation here. In this case, it is the Jew and also the stranger and even the cattle. Okay? They were all supposed to keep the Sabbath law. The immigrant was commanded by God to assimilate Israel's Sabbath law. And that's also a religious practice, right? Is that assimilation? Yeah. Yeah, it is. Leviticus 17:10. And whatsoever man there is that be of the house of Israel. Who would that be? Native born, Ezrak. Or of the strangers that sojourn among you. Who would that be? The ger, the foreigner. Whosoever, either one that eateth any manner of blood, I will even set my face against that soul that eateth blood, and I will cut him off from among his people. Therefore I said to the children of Israel, no soul of you, that's the Jew, right, shall eat blood, neither shall any stranger that sojourns, that's the immigrant, among you shall eat blood. Neither one was to eat blood. Now what was this about? God gave this to Israel because they lived in a midst of a people there were a lot of Canaanites and Gentiles there that were cannibals. And God was giving a very high picture of life, which, by the way, I'm planning the whole month of January. I don't always do a pro-life Sunday. I try to mention it. But I'm planning a whole month of January sermons on, I've been working on it this week, on things that have to do with God's high estimation of life. It's all over the Bible, okay? High estimation of life. So the Canaanites didn't have that high estimation of life. They cannibalized and all types of things, and God was removing that practice from among His people. And He said, not only will the Jew not eat blood, but anybody that comes into Israel and sojourns in Israel, they're not going to eat the blood either. We're not going to have those heathen practices of cannibalism in the land. So the immigrant assimilated the same blood-drinking prohibitions as the Jewish countrymen. Right? Do you see that? Okay. And then there's Leviticus 17:8. And thou shalt say unto them, whatsoever man there be of the house of Israel, that is the Jew, or of the strangers with sojourn, that is the Gers. Okay, the immigrants among you, that offereth a burnt offering or sacrifice. Now, I know this is a sentence fragment. I'm not going on to the other verses. I just want to throw that first part of that sentence up there to show you that when God gave instructions about making offerings, He didn't just give the offerings instructions to the Jewish people that was there. He also included the immigrants, the strangers, okay? Because they were expected to participate too, if they were going to be there. So the immigrant assimilated the nation's worship, which was a sacrificial system. God gave the command to all of them, to everybody. What do you see in every one of these verses that we're going over? There's two things. The Jews and the stranger. Okay? It's in all of these. And they're all given the same law. Okay? And there is certainly, within this, you can see God expected assimilation. Leviticus 24:16. He that blasphemeth the name of the Lord, he shall surely be put to death. And all the congregation shall certainly stone him, as well as he that is, when he blasphemeth the name of the Lord, shall be put to death. So there was a death penalty for taking God's name in vain in the Old Testament. May the Lord help us as Americans, because there's so many today that see no problem taking God's name in vain. God's name begins with an H. Holy. All through the Bible. And we should be very careful what we do with God's name. And God is very protective of His name. His name means something. That's why He's not just called by any name. I was listening to a gospel song this week, and they said in there, by any name you call Him. I thought, that is definitely not biblical. I love this song, but that little phrase right there is not. It might have fit well within that song. It might have rhymed with something, but it doesn't comport with the Word of God. So the immigrant was to assimilate God's prohibition on blasphemy. They were to honor God's name just like it. So that means how you talk when you're in Walmart. Is that assimilation? Is that God saying, whether you're a Jew or whether you're an immigrant coming here, you're all going to talk this way in Walmart? That sounds like assimilation to me, right? The immigrant did not possess his own traditions in any of these areas that we've been looking at today. But yet, what are we told all the time in America? I mean, this is what was so amazing to me as I was studying this. I was thinking, what I have been taught, what I have been told in the educational system, and especially by the media today, is diametrically opposed to what the Bible says. It is exactly the opposite. And you know what? If a person wanted to take down a good, godly Christian country, wouldn't that be the way to do it? Is to get everybody to think something that's outside the Bible and really get it ingrained inside of them. So, and what I'm talking about is, well, all these people come to America. We're a melting pot. We all come here and we all possess our own traditions, our own ideas. Well, wait a minute. If it's a melting pot, doesn't that imply some element of assimilation? A melting pot. Yeah, we do come with all types of different traditions. But there is also, we're not all going to be alike in everything. God gives us freedom to have some things that's different. But then there's some things that God says to Israel, look, these things have to be assimilated. You've got to be careful about this right here. These are things that you can't afford to have different ideas on. There are some things that you have to have the same ideas on if you're going to live in the same country. They did not possess their own traditions in these areas. And here's another one. Leviticus 20 verse 2. Again, thou shalt say to the children of Israel, whosoever he be of thee, or of thee, that sojourn in Israel, that giveth any of his seed unto Molech, he shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. So remember, Molech was a false god. and he had his little pot belly, and they would make a fire in the pot belly, and he had these extended arms, and they would place their children in the arms after they heated this god up. So it was glowing hot. Glowing hot. They'd take their children and put them in the arms of Moloch. And then they would beat, and you read about this in the book of Jeremiah. It's all right there in Jeremiah. They would beat on the drums of Topheth. The drums of Topheth. When you see that several times in the Bible, not once, not twice, but several times, those drums of Topheth, they beat on them to drown out the screams of their babies when they put them in the arms of their God, because they thought that that's how they could get to heaven through Moloch. That's how they could please their God. Now, isn't this something that heathen would go to such measures to please their God, and we won't lift it? We won't even go to church. We won't even read our Bibles. Puts us to shame, doesn't it? Puts us to shame. This is what, but God is saying, when you're Israel, you're in your land, and you're going to serve me. You're not going to serve Moloch. There's going to be people around you who serve Moloch, and they're supposed to drive them out, by the way. Supposed to drive them out. But if people were not driven out, they would certainly have to what? Begins with an A. Assimilate. Okay? There's a death penalty to the immigrant for bringing this religious change to the nation. Because this type of false God worship was not going to be a part of the nation. In other words, there are some religious practices that don't belong in a country. By the way, go to countries that practice Islam and take some of your ideas over there and see what happens. Yeah, it doesn't work too well. Religious ideas, sometimes it's best to have certain religious ideas in certain countries, right? It's kind of nice when you have a big pond separating you from some of that stuff. Okay? Or maybe a desert that separates you from some of that stuff. But certainly a border. And someone protecting that border in government that says, we're not going to let this pour through that border because this is going to be bad for our country. But yet today, we're told no. You can't talk like that. You just got to let anything and everything, any idea. So it's death penalty for bringing this religious change. Moloch, don't bring your foreign religion with you, is what God is saying here. Don't bring your foreign religion with you. That was for Israel in the Old Testament. And again, someone will say, oh, it's Old Testament. Well, I believe Old Testament is the Word of God just like New Testament. And someone will say, well, that's not for us today. That was a theocracy. Okay, but aren't there some ideas there that maybe we could benefit from today? That would give us at least a measure of wisdom that our country needs? Deuteronomy 26:11. And thou shalt rejoice in every good thing which the Lord thy God hath given unto thee and unto the house. Thou would be the Levite, which is a Jew, and that is among you. They were all to what? Rejoice in all the good things that God had given. And notice that Lord is all caps in the King James. That means that is Yahweh. Any God or a specific God? Specific God. So, they were to be thankful to the same source of blessing, and there was not one praying to Yahweh and another one to Allah. Okay? Not in Israel in the Old Testament. Not in Israel in the Old Testament. You didn't have that. Now in the United States, we might have people that are Protestant and Catholic, and they say there's a big divide there. You might have Calvinists and Arminians. You might have people that are Church of Christ and Christian Church, which are pretty quiet. And then you got Pentecostals over here that's pretty loud. And you just got all kinds of people. You even have people that many would call cults that claim the name of Yahweh and Christ here in the United States, like Mormonism, and Jehovah's Witness. But at least they all claim the name of Christ. They're all looking toward Christ, and they're reading their Bible. God forbid some of them add extra stuff to the Bible. but which I don't think we should do, but they do look at the Bible. But when you're looking at people that are Islamic, it's not the Bible that they go by. And they say that they believe in Jesus, but it's not the same Jesus. He's a moon god. He's not the Son of God. He is a moon god from the heathen practices that God pushed out of Israel in the Old Testament. So that was the Jesus that, help me out, started Islamic religion. Muhammad, thank you, that Muhammad prayed to. Out of all the gods that was out there, he had several, but he wanted to narrow it down. He found the moon god, and that's who he called Jesus. There was no immigration to the new nation followed by the cursing of that new nation. Because what's everyone supposed to do according to this verse? Rejoice in the good things which God had given them in that country. So the people who say that if you don't like America, you should leave America are biblically right. They're biblically, and people might not like that. And, sometimes maybe people can say that in a really mean way, but it is an axiom that should be embraced and followed through with. That if you don't like a country, what are you in the country? Because a country is not just borders, which you might say doesn't exist. It's also values, which you say doesn't exist. And that's just a recipe for disaster for the country. And God eliminated that in Israel in the Old Testament. And here's how He did it. It was all with assimilation. Look at Joshua 8:33. And all Israel and their elders and officers and their judges stood on this side the ark, and on that side before the priests, the Levites, which bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord, as well the stranger. So we have our two groups, right? All Israel and the stranger. They're all together in this. They got the ark of the covenant standing around them. Half of them over against Mount Gerizim, and the other half over against Mount Ebal, as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded before that they should bless the people of Israel. So what's this about? God had told Moses in Deuteronomy that when they got into the land, that they would have this time, that they would stop and they would bless the nation. There would be a blessing or a cursing, and here in Joshua they're doing it. They have crossed the Jordan River, and they have come into the land. And before they all settle in the land, they stop in this valley, and half of the tribes go up the side of Mount Gerizim, and half the tribes go up the side of Mount Ebal. And the ones that go up the side of Mount Gerizim were to pronounce blessings on the nation. And you can read about this in the Bible, all the things that bring a blessing, and they would talk about the things that bring a blessing. You serve God, you'll be blessed. You seek God, you'll be blessed. You keep His ways, you'll be blessed. And then the other half of Israel that went up Mount Ebal would answer back and shout out a curse. And they say, basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, if you don't worship God, you're going to be cursed. If you don't follow God, you're going to be cursed. If you disobey God, you're going to be cursed. And this was a big gathering of the nation before they went off to their separate tribes. And it was a reminder to them before they went in and settled and found their home there. Something that they could tell their children for generations to come. We stopped at Mount Gerizim and Ebal. And there was a blessing on one side and a curse on the other. And you had to decide, which mountain are you going up? The side of the blessing or the side of the curse? Well, not only Israel was involved in this, who else was involved in it? The stranger. As well as he that was born among them. Born among them. Yeah, the born among them was the native born, the Ezra, born in the land. 35, there was not a word of all that Moses commanded which Joshua read not before the congregation of Israel, with the women and the little ones and the strangers. So that verse also shows Israel and the strangers that were conversant among them. So the immigrant participated in the Gerizim Ebal national event. That was kind of like what we would, today we would celebrate the 4th of July or Memorial Day. We have a national event in the United States. They all did it in the Old Testament at the Ebal Gerizim national event. Says to me, if people come to America, they should be willing to embrace 4th of July, Thanksgiving. Why not? They would contribute to the blessing or the curse by their decisions too. Everybody in the country contributes to the blessing or the curse. Everybody in the United States every day is contributing to the blessing of the United States or the curse of the United States. Everybody. So when anybody comes into any country, a wise people will stop and ask the question, is this person going to bless our country or curse our country? Conversant means living, so the person living around you affects you. Up there at 35, the last line of 35, it says, the strangers that were conversant among them. Conversant means living. So the person living among you affects you because the person living around you is going to bring a... Yes. 1 Kings 8:41. Moreover, concerning a... that is not of the people of Israel, but cometh out of a far country for my name's sake, for they shall hear of thy great name and of thy strong hand and of the stretched out arm. When he come and pray toward this house. This is Solomon talking about he'd built the temple, and he says there's going to be people that's going to hear about our great God Jehovah in other countries. And they're going to come here to participate in the worship at this house, at the worship of our great God. It says, Solomon is praying to God, and he says, God, when these strangers come and they pray toward this house, in 43, hear thou in heaven thy dwelling place, and do according to all that the stranger calleth to thee for. By the way, he'd said the same thing about Israel in previous verses. And now he is including the stranger. Previous verses, Israel, they come, they pray toward this house. Hear them, God. And now Solomon is praying, God, the stranger from another country that prays toward this house, do what? Hear them. Is that assimilation? Is that being on the same page? It was expected that all people of the earth may know thy name to fear thee, as do thy people Israel, and that they may know that this house which I have builded is called by thy name. So the immigrant prayed to the same God and not another. The same God. The Lord. The immigrant prayed toward the same temple and not another. The same temple. 2 Chronicles 6:32. Moreover, concerning the stranger, which is not of thy people Israel, but is come from a far country, for thy great name's sake, and thy mighty hand, and thy stretched out arm. If they come and pray toward this house, so Solomon had an expectation here that the stranger would pray toward God's house just like the native born would pray toward that house. Not that the immigrants would worship with their own religion, but that they would join Israel in worshiping Yahweh at the one temple. Is that assimilation? That's assimilation. Deuteronomy 23:8. The children that are begotten of them shall enter into the congregation of the Lord in their third generation. Now this is interesting. Jewish practice in the Old Testament, the native-born citizens were called Ezrak, right? We saw that earlier. A stranger could become an Ezrak in the Third generation. So there's the command, Deuteronomy 23:8. When does that stranger that comes in and wants to be like Israel and join Israel, when do they become an Israelite? A citizen, basically. When do they? In the third generation. I wonder why. Assimilate.
Third generation, like the third year they're here, or they're... No.
Third generation.
Third
That's the 3 generations down, so that is assimilation. It's what it is. Their assimilation had to be proven. They couldn't just come in and say, well, we've come here to worship and we want to be like you. It had to be proven. There had to be the ones that came, their children, and finally their grandchildren could actually become Jewish, because assimilation was so important that people had common ideas. Citizenship was not a right in God's Israel in the Old Testament. It was not a right. People today say citizenship is a right. It's not. There's a lot of things that people say are a right, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you can just come up with anything you want and say, well, that's a right. And you can go out and say to someone, I think this should be a right. And 90% of the people today, well, I do too. And it was not a right. Yeah, that's true. They can be taken. But it was earned through assimilation. 3 generations of hard work. And then the people of Israel knew, well, these people are serious about being one of us. And that's when they could be there as a stranger, but they were not called an Ezrak. They were a Gur. They could not be called an Ezrak until the 3rd generation, where they earned through assimilation. Now, Isaiah 56:3, neither let the son of thee that hath joined himself to the Lord, there it is, he's joined himself to the Lord, don't let him speak, saying, the Lord hath utterly separated me from his people. Because if he was a stranger and he had joined himself to the Lord, God loves all people, right? And this stranger has shown himself that through 3 generations in this family, they've shown themselves that, hey, we're serious about this. Then God is saying, you're mine. And don't let anyone tell you that I've separated you, because I've not. And also don't let the eunuch say, behold, I am a dry tree. Because the eunuch served the same God as the person who wasn't a eunuch in this case. It's what Isaiah is talking about here. In verse 6, also the sons of the
stranger
that join themselves to the Lord, there it is again, to serve him and to love the name of the Lord, to be his servants. There's kind of definition of assimilation right there. Everyone that keepeth the Sabbath from polluting it, and taketh hold of my covenant. We've seen all kinds of verses along all of this. These are people that are doing what? Assimilating. So the immigrants join Israel and Israel's God. And then the next verse says, the Lord God, which gathereth the outcasts of Israel, saith, yet will I gather others to him besides those that are gathered unto him. And who are the others that's going to be gathered in the future unto the Lord? Who's gathered in the New Testament? Gentiles. Yeah, we're the Gurs, aren't we?
Yeah.
We Gentiles are Gurs. But the great thing what God is doing in the New Testament is he's doing it in the heart, in the individual. He's putting a new heart in the individual. Old Testament Israel was a picture. Christianity is about heathens assimilating God's ways. Okay? Old Testament, it had to be proven through 3 generations. But there's a quicker way of proving it in the New Testament, and that's through the new covenant, the new birth. You have a new birth, and the Holy Spirit lives inside of you, and you're baptized and have a testimony of Jesus Christ, then we know who you are, right? Can people fool you? Yeah, but we know who you are. You know, we take people at their word when they come with tears flowing down their face and they're saying, I love Jesus and I want to please him and I want to be baptized and I want to follow him. We put our arms around them and say, hey, we want to walk with you and help you in this. Because we're together in this. We all love Jesus and we want to serve Him, right? The millennial kingdom will be populated by assimilators. The millennial kingdom. When we get to heaven, who's going to go into heaven? Only those who are willing to assimilate. Look at Matthew 13. There's several different things in there. One of them is good fruit versus bad fruit. Jesus had said back in chapter 7, you'll know them by their fruit. And then there's another one in Matthew 13 that talks about good seed versus the tares. The wheat and the tares. Okay? So the tares are people who have not assimilated God's ways, but the wheat are people who have assimilated God's ways. And we got the good fish and the bad fish. We've got non-assimilators and assimilators. People who don't care about what God says and people who say, well, I want to know what God says and I want to do what He wants me to do. It's all about assimilation. So this was pictured in the Old Testament. It was good for the country. And it was wise for the country. I think it'd be wise for countries today. Now, the question comes about, what if they refuse to assimilate? And you can't remove them from the country. What do you do? Well, if you have someone in your home that refuses to, they're just so different from you, and you tell them, leave my house. I don't want you coming in my house and doing this. You eventually call the law, yeah. But if you have someone that's in your country that's doing that, well, I guess that's kind of what military is for. You know, cops police us and military polices enemies, basically protects us from enemies. What if you can't remove them? Well, Solomon faced this. There were people that were in Israel that had lived in Israel for hundreds of years. So we have seen all the things that God told them to do. Did they do all that God told them to do? We know that's the story of the Old Testament, right? We have all these beautiful things that God says is full of wisdom. And people look at it and say, well, I don't know what God really is trying to say, and that doesn't make any sense to me. I'll just do whatever I want to. Isn't that how people do God's ways? Treat it that way? So there were people that God said remove certain people. The Amalekites, the Moabites, a lot of the Canaanites, they were to be removed. Did they remove them all? No. Did they remove a lot of them? Yeah, partial obedience. That's what always gets us in trouble, is partial obedience, right? So, but they didn't complete the obedience, so they had people that stayed there, and they had people that probably came through the hundreds of years from Moses' time to Solomon's time from other countries, and were supposed to move from Gur to Ezra across 3 generations who probably failed to do that, and nobody seemed to care. Kind of like today, we got laws on the book, people just ignore it. Oh, it's not affecting me, not affecting anyone. We'll just kind of forget it until finally the snare is sprung, right? And then we realize, oh, we should have been enforcing this all along. So Solomon faced this, 1 Kings 9:20, and all the people that were left of the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, which were not of the children of... So, because they were strangers. Their children that were left after them in the land, whom the children of Israel also were not able utterly to destroy, upon those did Solomon levy a tribute of bondservice unto this day. So, there were people that stayed in Israel in Joshua's day. They did not drive them out. It gets to Solomon's day, and these people are still there, and they are a snare. They are a snare to the country. That's what they are. Because they don't have the same, begins with a V, values. They don't have the same values. Do they have to be just alike on everything? No, but were there core values that they needed to possess to share a country? Yes. So, what did Solomon do? It says... that were left of the children of Israel they were not able utterly to destroy upon those that Solomon. So there were some people here that they were not able to drive out. Solomon, hundreds of years later, puts a tribute of bond service on them. So bond service, forced labor, required to cultivate the fields, till, work, maybe in timber, or some of them he put cutting timber, okay, in one of the places scriptures there. And this is the light end of the usage of these words for bond service, because bond service can be, we're going to give you a job, but it can also be, we're going to subjugate you. That's the heavier end of the usage of those two words, okay? So you can pick whichever one. Solomon, I haven't really studied that out to figure out which one it probably is, but I'd say it's probably the former one up there, the top one, kind of on the light end of it, that Solomon, this tribute of bond service, means that he made sure that they had a job, and he got them busy. Because what happens to our own citizens when they're not busy? They become problems and snares. And if you have people that don't even possess your values and they're not busy, guess what they're going to be? They're going to be snares. So he put them to work. Okay, we can remove our enemies in the United States, so I'm not sure how this passage would apply to us. We're very capable of removing enemies. Now I'm talking about enemies, and there's going to be a debate about people, about who those enemies are. But if there are people who refuse to be Americans, to me, that would be an enemy. There are certain things that America encapsulates. And guys, if we're going to retain America, we have to ensure that people who come here want to embrace those things that make us Americans. And if they don't embrace the same values, then they are an enemy of the state. And we can remove them in the United States. God never rebuked Israel for failing to open their borders. In this day that we live in, where our borders have been swung wide open in the United States, people would say, well, you're supposed to open the borders. That's the godly thing. Open the borders and let these people come here. They've got terrible lives in other places. Let them come here. Well, God could have said that to Israel. Swing those gates wide open, Israel, and let everybody come here. Open your borders. God not only failed to tell them to swing their borders wide open, He never even rebuked them for having their borders closed. Because He was the one that had told them, taught them, that closed borders are required if you're going to be safe in an evil world. Not everyone in the world is going to share your ideas. By the way, what would the Pilgrims think? The Pilgrims had to leave countries because people did not share their... And they came here so that they could raise our children with these values that make a country great. And today, America won't even teach those values. And our textbooks at school don't even say nice things about the Pilgrims. They bring up terrible things about the Pilgrims and talk about how narrow-minded they were. That, dear friend, is a renunciation of our values. And that's already been at work in our school systems for decades in the United States, being taught to our children. And that, my friend, is also why we're having a lot of problems in our country. Because we have people with all kinds of different values. Nehemiah 13:1. I'll never forget Daniel teaching on this over on this side back a few years ago. And I remember Daniel said, this is a hard passage. On that day they read in the book of Moses in the audience of the people, and therein was found written that the Ammonite and the Moabite should not come into the congregation of God forever, because they met not the children of Israel with bread and with water, but hired Balaam against them that he should curse them. Howbeit our God turned the curse into a blessing. Now, it came to pass when they had heard the law, this is after Nehemiah brings them back from the bondage, and they hadn't even been reading the law, but now Nehemiah reads the law to them. It says, when they had heard the law, that they separated from Israel all the mixed multitude. I wonder who the mixed multitude was. People who refused to assimilate. And what did they do with them? Separated them, which, separated them. They were removed from the country. And I remember Daniel talking about, well, some of them have even gotten married. You know, not only when you let them in the country, people that don't have your values. And then you got a church that says, just come on in. You let them in the church and they're teaching Sunday school and preaching in the pulpit, and they don't share your values, and then you hire them to teach children, and they don't share your values, then at some point you've got a country that's got a mixed multitude. A bunch of people that don't share the same values. And they had gone into captivity because of this. And when they came back out, Nehemiah reads the law and they recognize, well, this is why we came into captivity. And they were even married, intermarried. And what did they do? They put away their spouses even. And that's the part that Daniel's talking about. This is kind of hard. But that's what they did. The mixed multitude, refusal to assimilate. So much for that D word, right? We're always told, what is our strength? Diversity is our strength. Not always. Someone says, oh, you're a racist, Chuck DeVries. Well, just hang on with me. Hang on and think. Hang on. Don't prejudge me. Just hang on and think. Separated means they were excluded them from the country. The Canaanites among Israel only recreated the miseries of the Exodus for the Jewish people. That had been their experience through hundreds of years of the nation. They came out of the land of bondage, which was Egypt. And as they were coming across the wilderness, God says, I'm going to give you laws that's going to make your life a whole lot better. These are good principles. They get in the land, they have hundreds of years in the land, and they're not abiding by them, not abiding by them, not abiding by them, and finally they're taken into captivity. And that's what happens. If you have a mixed multitude, you are recreating the miseries that you had before God gave you your good blessings. So Ruth 1:16, Ruth said to Naomi, we all know these verses, right? Thy people shall be, does that sound like assimilation? And thy God shall be, does that sound like assimilation? Do we want biblical principles replaced by Sharia law? Are you familiar with Sharia law? Sharia law? And by the way, I'm not against Islamic people, Muslim people. There are good Islamic people in the world. Okay? And some of them come here to the United States and actually assimilate. Okay? But when they are setting up places like Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Dearborn, Michigan, where they have Sharia law that is ruling, what are we hearing in the news? A lot of unrest in those communities, right? Why? Because there's no assimilation. We allowed these people to come in and set up their own little experiments inside of the United States and be a country within a country. Is that going to work? Biblically, is it going to work? No. Well, let me ask you, do you want biblical principles replaced by Sharia law?
No.
The Bible teaches love for all, even unbelievers. Okay, so Ethan, that's always good to remember. You know the Bible wants you to love everybody, right? Even people that do not believe. Sharia law teaches death to the infidels. Are those same values? So if you have a country that's built on Bible principles, and you have people that don't agree with you, what are you going to do to them? You're going to love them. Yeah, even if they can't stay in the lane, you're still going to love them, right? You're going to love people. But if you have a country in Sharia law is what's moving that country, controlling that country, and there's people there that disagree with the Sharia law, what's going to happen to those people? They're going to get killed. One's going to get loved. Under one system you get loved, under the other system you get killed. Is that kind of an extreme comparison? But it's true. It's true. Now, does that mean I hate Islamic people? Not at all. But am I telling you the truth? Yeah. And you're going to see some more examples here. The Bible teaches justice guided by absolutes that are given by God and is equally applied blindly to everyone. Remember, all these passages we looked at, how many laws were there for the Jewish people and the stranger? One law. And they were all together, blindly applied to all. The laws that's in our Constitution, on our books in the United States of America. Why? Do we ask if a person is male or female? Or what ethnicity they are? If they're black or white? If we are in a court of law, should that even matter in a court of law? No, because justice is applied blindly to all. That's a Bible teaching. But in Muslim countries, those countries are led by whatever Muslim leader has control at the moment. And whatever they say goes, goes. And it could change tomorrow. Right? Is that stability? We want that for America? Christianity teaches that lying is a sin. Have you ever tried to lie? And your heart kind of thumps a little bit, Caleb? It's kind of thumping in there because you're thinking, I know this isn't really totally true. Your heart, that's good because that's conviction. That's the Holy Spirit convicting. Right? The Bible teaches that lying is a sin, but in Islam it's permitted during war, or you can even lie to please a spouse. Boy, that would be convenient, wouldn't it? Now, don't you men go and embrace that. Lying to please your spouse. There are times that you can lie in Islam. There's no problem. If you're in war, there's nothing wrong with it. There's other variations like women in society. We were in St. Louis this week and we were at one of my favorite places in the world, which is Ted Drew's. Anyone been to Ted Drew's? Yes, we were at Ted Drew's and I thought, I'm just going to get a cheap ice cream cone. And I'm going to, oh, it was so good. So good. I told Renee, I said, I just died and went to heaven with this little ice cream cone right here. And this Muslim guy drives up and him and his wife get out and he's in shorts. And she has garb from the top of her head all the way. You could not even see a crack down there by her shoes. Couldn't even see if she even had shoes on. Her dress was over the ground. She had scarf over here, so the only thing you could see was her eyes. And I'm looking at this, and I'm thinking to myself, I made a comment to Renee about if you come to America, that's not how we treat our women in America. Not how we treat. We believe biblically that God has different roles for men and women in our Christian circles in America, but we don't treat our women that way. Jesus elevated women. So there's variation that can cause a great problem in our country. If we have a bunch of people that's living that way and then people who live our way at some point, can you see where that could become a stress point in the country? How about this one right here? The life of a gay person. In a Muslim country, what happens to a gay person? They are executed. In the United States of America, where gay people really do not like Christians. Have you noticed? That's why I know this is a spiritual battle. It's a spiritual battle. Because you can love a gay person and they will still say you're awful. And the reason they say you're awful is because you don't agree with them. They want you to agree with them. But in a Muslim country, they will kill a gay person. In a Christian country, we will love a gay person. And we will tell them, have you considered that this is against God's laws? Have you considered that this could cause you a lot of problems? I mean, we don't hate gay people. We're not going to put them in the pulpit. But we are going to love them and tell them the truth of Jesus because we were sinners ourselves one time without Christ, right? So there's a huge difference on how you treat people. So a nation is not just defined by its borders, but its values. Having these nations keeps wars down. And ensuring that people in a country subscribe to at least a common set of values keeps wars down. And if you don't have that common set of values in your country, what are you going to have in your country? Unrest, war at some point. It's not going to be out there. It's going to be right here. John Adams said, "Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other." Was John Adams saying there that there is a certain element of assimilation that needs to be in America? Yeah, and what type of assimilation was he talking about? Moral and religious. You can think he was saying all Christian. I mean, that's what some liberal professors will say. You're just saying everybody has to convert to Christianity. Well, for 200 years, everybody did not convert to Christianity, but at least everybody subscribed to Judeo-Christian ethic, and they knew that you're not supposed to kill, you're not supposed to steal, you're not supposed to lie, you know? They might not embrace Jesus, but they subscribed to the same ethic, and that was the glue that held us together. Do you want your nation to become the nation that the immigrant came from? Somalia. Do you know what Somalia is like? We have people in Congress now that's from Somalia. Some of our loudest voices and most problematic people. Russia, China. If they come here from these other countries, should we welcome them if they're willing to assimilate?
Yes.
Yeah, to a certain degree, we can welcome some. But if they're not willing to, then that would change our way of life if they don't assimilate. The only problem is, as Americans, we have been told that we're not supposed to be concerned about our way of life. We're just a melting pot anyway, and diversity is our strength. So let's just become more diverse. Basically, everything I've said today, sit down and shut up. But it's there, it's in the Bible. If a way of life is biblically based and you're going to change it, then you're going to have problems. And the United States of America has been biblically based. Might not be totally Christian, but at least biblically based. And to go away from that is going to create problems. And we're having those problems. Without assimilation as a goal, national disintegration is invited. And that is a fact. I'm going to be dogmatic about that. That what we are being called to in America is the disintegration of America. And I'm not a prophet. But I'm prophesying almost. I'm just using wisdom. The U.S. has been, 1892, the Supreme Court called it a Christian country. That's been debated what that really means, but we all know, as we said earlier, biblically based at least. We are often told that our strength is our diversity, and that was not the case in Old Testament Israel. Diversity was not the case. And I remember a while ago I said, hang on with me, because we're going to differentiate. This is not true if values are not embraced. You have to have values that are similar. You have to have similar values. In the last 10 years, the following leaders have declared multiculturalism a failure. And in my research on this, you can go out on the internet and you can find these two terms, failed or utter failure, have all been said in the last 10 years by these people. Now this is going to surprise you. These are the people. Multiculturalism, this diversity, bringing people from all kinds of countries. It's a failure, or an utter failure, as said by Britain's Prime Minister David Cameron. Most of these are not in office right now, but they have been in the last 10 years. The French President Nicolas Sarkozy, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, Australia's Prime Minister John Howard. Every one of them have said, because those countries have experimented with, we're just going to bring all kinds of people in and be this big melting pot. England right now, London, is being taken over by Islamic ideas. Now, if they had a bunch of people from Muslim countries that came there, it'd be fine. But if they don't embrace England's ideas and they bring the ideas from Iran with them, then you got what you got in London right now. Where there are more, I told you about 3 months ago, there's more what than what on Sunday in London.
More mosque.
There's more people worshiping at mosques than there are going to churches in London on any given Sunday. And you would have never... Where Charles Spurgeon had the great Metropolitan Tabernacle and preached the gospel to thousands of people. Spain's Prime Minister, Jose Maria Aznar. Okay, so this is my little ditty right here to help understand. Mass immigration minus assimilation equals invasion. That's what it is. It's immigration. It's invasion, excuse me. Mass immigration minus assimilation equals invasion. I don't think I've heard Charlie Kirk say that somewhere back through there, but it's very true. That if you have mass immigration and the people don't assimilate, then you're just being invaded. That's all that's happening. And keep that in mind for next week's sermon. No assimilation is to ignore the principles which hold the people together and to discard a way of life, in our case, a Christian life. A multiracial society will be strong when it's founded on Christianity. Now, wait a minute. Did I say that? Don't let that get past you. Now, look at that second one. We're on our last slide. A multiracial society will be strong when founded on Christianity. And I'm talking about diversity there, but diversity of races. Diversity of races. Is there a problem to have different races in one country? No, no problem at all. Did God make all the races? He sure did. But a multi-faith society will self-destruct. You can quote me on that. Diversity of faith. Diversity of values, let's just say. Diversity of values. You don't have the same values, the country is going to self-destruct. 100 years ago, everyone is just kind of expected that you didn't go to church, at least you lived like you did. But now everybody's just expected, oh, do your own thing, whatever you want to do. So please understand that. Diversity of races is a good thing. Diversities of values or religious ideas that are too disparaging from each other is going to create problems. Shared values and a common identity are essential to maintain a nation. So allegiance must be sworn to Christian values and constitutional principles. I'm not saying a person has to be a Christian to be in the United States, but I'm saying it's Christian values that's made us what we are. Our Constitution is based on Christian values, and our study that we did 2 years ago one Sunday night on, what was the name of that?
Biblical citizenship.
Biblical citizenship. That was the whole point of that, is that America is founded on Christian values. So we have to at least try to live by Christian values and have an allegiance to constitutional principles. And someone's going to come here and not going to do that, and they're going to complain about how bad our country is. We should give them a good hug, and then when they spit in our face, we should give them a good kick. You're out of here. You're out of here. Because we live in a world of evil, and we have to recognize that. Try to be good to people as much as you can. Let's pray.